Hi guys, welcome to the channel. So as a part of this video, I'm going to take a mock interview for one of my subscriber. His name is Parul Dung, having a total of 3 years of experience into software testing, and the skill that I will be asking him will be purely automation. So let's welcome him. Hello.
Hello, sir. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you? I'm good.
Perfect,
So which
perfect.
part of
Thank you.
India you are connected?
I'm from Amritsar, Punjab.
Okay. Uh, at starting, I thought Parul is the name of a girl, but so is it common in Amritsar to name a? I mean, just asking.
Well, it's not common. This is something that I, face quite often. But yeah.
Okay, because I have name. I have friend from Punjab whose name is Simran, and he's a guy also, and I have name as Simran, who is a girl also. So,
Girl also.
Simran is
Yeah,
in
yeah.
common in Punjab, right?
Yep.
Both boys and girls.
Right.
I have stayed in Punjab in Halwara, Ludhiana. If you are aware of this place, I have stayed
Well,
there for 3 years. You are aware of
I'm,
Ludhiana?
yeah, I am aware of Ludhiana. Yeah.
Okay. Inside
My
that,
relatives
there
live
is a
there.
small village called as Halwara. I stayed there
Okay.
for 3 years.
Okay. Great, great. Glad
Sure.
to
So,
know.
Parul, how confident you are for today's interview?
Yep. I'm pretty well confident.
Okay.
I was excited,
Okay.
since morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have work from home going on, or you are
Yeah.
working from
Work
office?
from home.
Work from home. Okay. Okay. So if you are really confident, so I would like to start this interview, and
Yeah.
I will allow you to go ahead to introduce yourself.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Well, my full name is Parul Dang, and I work as a senior software test engineer at Wipro HR Services, where I am primarily responsible for test automation. I have overall experience of 3 years. I have experience in functional testing, regression testing, smoke testing, and end-to-end testing of web UI applications as well as REST API applications. I have also some experience in manual testing. Other than that, I am pursuing MCA from IGNU, and I really love to read and learn about technologies, and I'm basically, as I said, from Amritsar. That's all.
Okay. So before we proceed with this interview, I wanted to ask, like, since you're already working in some company with senior automation designation or senior test engineer or senior software test engineer, whatever it is, um, like, what made you to do your MCA course? Like, I want to understand this.
So basically, after completing my BCA, I got a job. So Wipro is my first organization only. So I am working here from last 3 years. So other than that, I really thought of pursuing MCA as well. MCA was always in my mind to do, but since I got job, so I also wanted some experience. And along with experience, I couldn't, pursue full time education. So that's why I thought of choosing IGNU. Because in distance learning, I have learned that IGNU is best in distance mode of learning. So that's why I chose MCA from there.
Are you able to
And
manage both?
yeah, on weekend, we used to have classes for MCA, and and weekends are off at office. So yes,
Okay.
I am able to
Okay.
manage.
Is it okay to you that Monday to Friday office and then Saturday, Sunday your distance learning course? Like, you're okay with that?
Sometimes it becomes hectic to manage both, but as I am really fond of technologies and doing coding stuff and writing programs, so both are of my interest. And the one very biggest advantage of doing MCA along with work is that whatever I gain from MCA, from my classes and from my textbooks of IGNU, I really can implement all those things practically at my work, which is a very beneficial thing. So I will give you an example. Last in the last semester, I had a subject database management, and in BCA I I couldn't understand what normalization is, but in MCA I really read about normalization and was also able to see the structures of at my company, like how the database structures are being there,
Got
and
it.
it really helped me to understand normalization until depth.
Got
So that's a very beneficial thing for me. I mean, in fact, it would be for someone who is also in the same field and also studying the same.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this is very beneficial thing. Yeah.
that is true. But the only thing is, someone will not be that much energetic to do both Monday to Friday job and then Saturday Sunday office. I mean, your distance learning.
Uh,
But if you're really
yeah.
doing it and implementing the same thing in your office job, or even though in your home, whatever application you're trying to automate it, that will really help
Mhm.
you.
Correct.
That's good to
Right.
hear. Yeah, yeah, Parul. So you're okay with this video to go live on my channel?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Parul. Let's get started then. I want to understand. Your resume is right next to me. I will be asking you
Okay.
questions based on only from your resume and nowhere else. So,
Okay.
any idea like if you have a web page today, if I give you a web page, or if I share my screen with you or show you a web page, and if I
Mhm.
ask you how many links are there in that web page, is there any idea like you will write a code and show to me that how many number of links are present in that web page? Any idea? Like how can you solve
Yep.
this?
Yeah. Yep. So, should I explain verbally first?
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, I'll be fetching all the links of a tag using Selenium, and I will be using driver.find elements, which will be returning me a list of web elements. And then since it will be a list, I can simply get its size using size method. So this will give me the size of the or number of links present on the web page.
Okay. So it will give you a web elements return type of find elements is a list of web elements, right?
Web
And
elements,
let's say
correct?
that
Yep.
your web elements is a, and
Mhm.
now you will get a dot size, right? Where you will store it, in
Yep.
which data type you will store it.
It will be stored in int because
Okay.
size will always be an integer.
Okay. Any idea about synchronization? Why we use in Selenium? Why synchronization has come into the picture?
Well, yeah. So synchronization is, to give an exclusive, or I would say mutually exclusive access to a shared resource. So let's say so we know that Java is multi-threading, right? Multi-threading is quite, quite possible in Java, and the first advantage of using Java is to it gives multi-threading support. And whenever there are some shared resources, and if our applications has more than one threads, all the threads can access and update that shared resource, and which may result into inconsistent results. To remove this problem, we use synchronization, so that wherever is the shared resource, we every thread has the mutual exclusive thread. So if one thread is using that shared resource, no other thread should be allowed to use that resource until the first thread is done with the stuff that it needs
Got
to
it.
do with the.
Got it. How can you do that? Any idea?
Well, there is a keyword called synchronize in Java, and we can pass an object to it. Which is a shared resource. So that's how we can.
I got this one, what you are telling, but we can do synchronization with some weights in Selenium. You remember that?
Weights. Mm, mm, mm. Well, I'm not,
Okay.
able to recall
Okay.
it. If you can share.
Yeah, yeah, sure. See, you use synchronization because the speed of your Selenium is much, much
Mhm.
faster than your application speed. And
Correct.
to have sync between them, we use
Mhm.
synchronization. And this can be achieved using implicit and explicit wait. You heard about them?
Okay. Yep. Implicit. I was not able to relate how, in which context, the weight is. Yep, implicit weight. Definitely, Selenium is quite faster than the, browser. So to make, it synchronized with the browser speed, we have to use implicit and explicit
You
weights.
have used implicit wait in your organization.
Yep.
You have even used explicit wait.
Yes.
Okay, okay, sure. I just want to know, I don't want the syntax of how to take a screenshot, but have you taken screenshot using Selenium before?
Well, yes, there is a library called AShot. So there was a particular requirement where we used to have, take the screenshot of a particular element of a web page, not the entire web page. So we used AShot library, but I think since Selenium 4, there is also a method called take screenshot, which can take the screenshot of the page. But I used AShot library to take
Got
the
it.
screenshots.
So you have used screenshot, right, in your application that
Yeah,
you are
yeah,
trying to automate. So
yes.
I'm asking, like, can you tell me the reason why this screenshot picture has come into the picture? Like, why it is
Yeah,
required to take a screenshot? Any idea?
yeah. So let's say there is a flow which includes around 20 pages, and there are around, let's say, 40 scenarios which are being validated across these 20 pages. Now, let's say my script got failed at 18th page. Now, how it got failed, what was the root cause of the failure, or what was the error? and what was the state of the last screen where it got failed, in order to determine that I have to take the screenshots when my script is failing, just to make sure that I do not need to run the script again to see where it is failing, to see the screen with eyes, that's why we have to take the screenshots.
Yes, exactly. Any idea like what is the procedure to take the screenshot?
Procedure as in, I mean,
Like when you think of taking a screenshot of any of maybe a failure page where your application has like come up with a bug, or let's say where your application has responded badly, or you want to take a screenshot of your successful page just to make sure that this is what we expected and this is what it is. So like there will be procedure, right, to take a screenshot. Any idea, like heard about this?
well, throughout my experience, wherever I have used screenshots, I normally, whenever, so basically when we write automation frameworks, we properly handle the exceptions, right? What I do whenever an exception is thrown, in the catch block, I used to write the code for taking the screenshot, so that I only have the screenshots for failure scenarios. So I'm not sure if if this was a perfect answer.
Okay.
That was you.
So what I'm asking is, whatever you have said is absolutely fine, because I understand you are telling me based on your experience. But there will be a procedure to take a screenshot. Just let me know if what I'm telling is what you already know or not. So there is a procedure to take a screenshot, right? Like you will typecast your WebDriver to take screenshot, and then you will take the screenshot using get screenshot, and then you have heard about this?
Yep. Then it will be saved into a file.
Okay.
Right,
So
on
what
that
is the
one.
next step? Can you tell me? Like after you have taken
It will be
screenshot?
Yep, that object will be used to save it as a file on the disk using output.file.
Yeah, then it will be stored in the temporary file, and then you will copy paste from
Copy it
the
from
temporary file to the file that you actually needed. Okay,
right.
you heard about this, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's suppose that you're using soft assert, and now I'm not going deeper into soft assert now. I will be going after this question. You're using soft assert, let's say, and your to whichever comparison you are doing it, it is not meeting the like comparison is not at all true. So in soft assert, right? Even though your comparison fails, it will continue. So my
Yep.
simple question is, when comparison is failing in soft assert, will you get any error?
In soft assert, right? I guess yes, we will be getting an error, but that won't stop the execution. We will be able to proceed to the next step.
Yeah,
We will be
exactly.
getting an error in the
That I
log.
already said, right? I'm asking which kind of error you will be getting. Any idea?
I can guess. I'm not 100% sure. So is
Okay.
it a kind of assertion failed? I guess it would be. I'm not
Yeah,
aware about the
it is
exact
assertion error.
exception.
It is assertion error
Assertion
that
error.
you
Yep.
will be getting.
Yes. Assertion.
Because I mean, this is one of the interview questions that you can expect in future
Yep.
because your experience is more today. I know this is silly question, but people
No, it was
will.
not silly. It was,
Yeah,
we should
but
be aware about all the exceptions that we are getting.
exactly,
Thank you.
exactly. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is this is like from a corner of a book. I'm asking this question, not from the top of the book. So, yeah, definitely you can expect this question that like when you are using soft assert and your comparison is failing, and you know that it will proceed further. What kind of
Yeah.
error that you can expect in your uh, so you will be getting assertion error.
Assertion.
That's the right answer. So assert and soft assert, right? If I give you an option, to automate some web application, and I tell you that you have your rights to use whatever you want. You want to use soft assert, you use it. You want to use assert, you use it. Like which one you will prefer to use it? Any idea?
Well, yeah. So let's say my test case comprises of 10 steps and 10 test steps. Okay. And third step, or I would say, third step at the all the steps are not, from fourth to 10th steps. These steps, test steps are not dependent on third test step. So what I will do, I will simply use soft assert there, because next steps are independent. They can be executed independently. They do not need any output or anything which is being done at the test step 3. So there I can use test step. But if further test steps are accessing some data which is generated in test step 3, there I will need to use hard assert, so that it should be failed. Because obviously, if data is not generated, that the further steps are reading from, then those steps should not be executed at all.
Okay. In your company, do anyone tell you that you need to use only assert, or anyone is there who will tell you that you need to use only soft assert, or it is based on you, like you are free to use whatever assert you want?
So I mean, basically we are free to use, but yes, that needs to be dependent. Dependent on the situation. Like if you are using assert, then you have to explain why are you using hard assert and why are you using soft assert.
Okay.
So my primarily explanation is this only. If the test steps are individual, I mean independent of the further before steps, then I would use soft assert. If my test steps are dependent on some test step, then I will use hard assert there.
Got it. Got it. You heard about this assert class methods, right? You have multiple assert class methods. Aware of this?
Yes.
Can you name?
Assert true, assert false, assert equals. I think one is assert null. Other than that, I think that only I can.
You can also use assert fail.
Assert fail.
You can check it after this session.
Yep, definitely. May I note it down, because I have taken my notebook with me, because all the videos that I have seen yours, you share a quite good knowledge, so that's why I have taken my notebook with me. May I write that?
Yeah, sure. Please write it, and you will be getting this video. I mean, you should not be worried about that. You will be getting this video from where you can copy each and everything. So
thank you.
I understand that when any software tester is working on automation testing, page object model or POM is one of the things that we can expect from each and every individual software tester to know about it, right? So right. I know that you will be also knowing, and I can see in your resume also you have written about it. So I want you to tell me in brief how POM works.
Okay, sure. So page object model is something what we do, we divide our web pages or common web pages into objects. So we create one class for common portions, or I would say for one page. Let's say there are some pages and they do not have anything common. Just to make it simple, we will be having one class for every page, and in that class we will be having locators or web elements that are present on that page only. So one class for one page, and then we will be having methods. I mean, obviously these data members or locators are going to be private, but in order to interact with them, we will be having the interaction methods within that class only. So let's say if this is a login page, within that I will be having 3 web elements. One would be of username, one would be password, one would be of button, login button, and then I will be having 3 methods: enter username, enter password, and click on the submit button, which will be basically doing interactions with those with those web elements. So this is the page object model, one class for one page. And in my test classes, I will be creating the objects of these classes, and then will be calling their interaction methods in order to interact with those elements. So
understood on a high level. Understood this one on a high level. I will be asking you a few questions on POM now. So in POM, page object model, which is also called as lazy initialization technique, you have 3 steps, right? I want to know those 3 steps.
If I'm not wrong, you are referring to page support thing. I mean, page factory annotations that we use.
It is one of the step, but there are 3 steps in it.
Okay. So so obviously we'll be using page factory annotations, find by annotations on the web elements. And then in order to, in the constructor of the class, we'll be initializing those elements using page factory.init elements. And in the test classes, then I will be simply creating the object of the page object model that I need to, test on where I am. And then I will be calling their interaction methods.
Got it. See, I think, what you are telling is absolutely correct, but I think you don't know that whether that is only the answer of my question. So you have 3 steps here. First step is declaration, then initialization, and then utilization. So you know that in page object model, you declare it with find elements annotation, right? So that is
Right.
that that is declaring it using find by annotation is called as a declaration. And then you have given me the correct answer that you use page factory inside your constructor, right? So that is nothing but your initialization. And then finally there is utilization, right? Utilization is nothing but you will create. What is utilization? Tell me.
So once the elements are initialized, in order to, I mean, utilize them, I mean, to if you have to enter the username, you will have to utilize them, right?
Like how will you
So
utilize it?
providing the, so I'll be creating the public methods within the
Okay.
class only that I'll be calling from my test classes.
Yeah, you will be creating a method for each and every component. Is it so?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you'll be creating method for each and every component. Let's say you have a login page now. Now you know what is login page. It will be having, you just tell me to utilize it or to totally completing automating this login functionality, like how many methods you will create it inside your this
So
utilization part.
utilization part. Okay. So I'll be creating first of all enter username, which will be taking the string argument. Obviously, that will be go into the username field. Then I will create enter password, and then I will create click on login button. So 3 methods.
Okay. Yeah, 3 methods. And then you said me that you will be creating one more class, which is nothing but a test
Test
class.
class.
So just tell me now, now in your test class file, you will be launching your browser and you will set your set property, right? All those things. And then finally you will have to create an object. Which object you will create it inside your test case class? Can you tell me that?
I'll be creating the class of, object of this, page object class that I have just created. Like if its name is login page, so I will be creating an object of this class, login page.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have worked with POM, is it so? Or you have worked in your home or you have worked in your company?
Well, I have worked a little bit in POM, but yep, I have read about them a lot. I mean, I
Okay.
really like to,
Yeah.
as I said, read. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the absolutely correct
So
answer. And this is
I
what,
also, sorry.
tell me, please tell me.
So there's also one approach that I would like to share. I mean, the Fluent interface. When we are writing the utilization methods, what we can do, we can return the object of the class itself, so that we do not need to call all the methods again to provide the method chaining.
Exactly. You can do even that. You can do even that. Any idea you have why someone has to follow POM, page object model? Any idea?
Well, what I can say, it gives you, instead of having all the objects in the web page at one place, this allows you to divide your pages into classes. And whenever you have to, let's say, XPath gets changed of any particular element in the future, you do not need to go through all the and to the entire object repository. You know which page it is. You only have to go to its class and just update its XPath. You will be only having 4 to 5 which are specific to that page only. That's why
Exactly.
we follow page object model.
Exactly. So there is an exception because of which we go to page object model. Whatever you have answered is absolutely correct. But I want to know that exception because of which we follow page object model. Any idea?
Yeah. So that is tail element reference exception, because using find by annotations in page object models, whenever we utilize those methods or whenever we call utilization methods, those elements are found afresh. So if an element which was found earlier could have been become stale, so in order to remove that exception, we use page
Yeah,
object models.
that's the right answer because there are few elements in any web page where the address of web page can change when maybe you refresh the page. When you refresh the page and perform some actions, there are chances that the element that you're trying to operate or your element that you're trying to automate or that the element on which you're trying to do something, its address may change or it may get stale. Stale is nothing but it can get old, and that's the reason you will find out stale reference exception. And that is the reason to all the viewers who will be watching this video, for them I'm telling, that's the reason you will get stale reference exception, and that is the reason someone will go to page object model. That's the right answer, Parul. I'm really happy for that. I want to understand one thing. Since you said me that in page object model there is a initialization part where you will use page factory, right? In case I have seen many people, in my career, they will not use page factory. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe they will forget it, or maybe after that they will Google it and they will use it. But I have seen many people, they know to inspect the element using find element or to declare it, and they know to create an method for each and every element that you're using. They know that they need to create a class, different class, which is also called as test class. They know to now call a particular, create an object of pom class, and then finally doing, they know each and everything. But I have seen many people who don't know that they need to initialize the element by using page factoring. So have you come across that if someone is not using page factory inside your constructor, which is nothing but, if you in your page object model, if you don't do initialization step at all, which kind of exception you can get it? Any idea?
Well, no,
Okay.
I haven't seen that exception.
Okay, no issue. I mean, this is one of the interview question I was asked few days back. Actually this question which I asked you just now, this is very famous question. It can be asked to even a fresher person or even a 10-year of experience person. Question remain the same, and answer is very simple: null pointer exception. I mean, in
Oh,
case possible, if you have your local system with you, your personal laptop, you can do it and check it out. I mean, you will get null pointer exception.
yep.
Nothing to be worried, because this is just
So
us.
just one question here. So this exception we will be getting when we will be using one of the utilization methods. What I understood, because those web elements didn't get initialized, right? They were
Exactly.
not found. So
Exactly.
when we'll be,
Exactly.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
I can see your resume. State references. So I want to know, you're working in Wipro from last 3 years, right? So from starting, you were working on automation itself, or at starting you were working even with manual and then you moved to automation, or how it was?
So it was mixed, it was about, about testing at all. So initially, yes, there were some times when we had to extend support to the manual testing. Then wherever automation was possible, so we introduced automation itself. So yep, both mix of them. I personally believe you cannot proceed to automation if you do not know any manual knowledge about it. If you do not know how to explore manually the application and how to create test cases from manual standpoint, you cannot directly go to automation, right? So every automation tester has to extend support to manual testing to actually gain the knowledge. I mean, what is expected from automation.
I want to know genuinely, just let me know this question very genuinely, because this is just a mock interview. Uh,
Mhm.
See, I understand that you have a great knowledge in automation. I really believe that. So you have 3 years of experience. I just want to know, like, I know that when you would have joined the company, they would have not given you automation role. They would have given you manual, because this is what the standard is. And
Mhm.
so after how many days they moved you to automation, or from how many days you're working on automation?
Well, around 6 to 7 months, I guess.
Got it, got it.
Well, I'm not pretty sure about the timeline, but it was around this much
Got
only.
it, got it. That's a really nice job that you have done, that moving to automation. You are inspiring many, frankly speaking, frankly speaking. And this is what I will suggest to each and everyone who, even though who are watching this video, that after working for some years, you have to move to automation, because getting a job after 3 or 4 years will be really difficult as a manual tester. That's
Mm,
really impressive, Parul. I want to understand this, like when a new requirement has come, so
mm,
I believe you will be having product manager or business analyst. Like, how do you decide that? Like, what do you do? You first manually test it, because it's a new feature, right? It's a new
mm.
feature now. Now,
Right.
my understanding is, when a new feature is coming, you will test it
Mm,
perfectly, and then release it, and then finally automate it, right? For the further releases, because in your further releases, to perform the regression testing, you will just run the automation script. I believe this is what you guys will be following. Am I right?
correct. Right. Right.
So I want to know, when a new requirement is coming, you will be, do you do manual testing also for that? Like whether it is
Yes.
working perfectly fine or not?
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And after release only you do automation, or before release you have to do automation and you have to show the result to your manager that regression is working fine?
So, it depends on the various factors like timeline of the project and what type of project it is. If it is a UI application, then there is, lesser chances of automating things. I mean, automating many scenarios because it's UI and you have to write each and every stuff. But if it is an API application, then definitely we try to automate before the release itself to test it again and again so that we can run it. Because I personally believe at API level, it's easier to automate rather than at UI level, right? So that's how we do. If it's a UI application, if we can introduce automation a little bit, if there are, let's say, 100 scenarios of a module, if we can automate 20 out of them, then that's also perfectly fine. If we cannot, then we take that up after the release for the regression testing.
Okay. And I wanted to know, you said me that after the releases also you will be working on your, like how frequent you get your new requirement from your business analyst? How?
So basically, across my experience, I've been part of various projects, which some of them were already released midway, and some were started from scratch. So I mean, if if it's from scratch, then obviously whenever we have the discussions around the requirements, how the things should go, if we are having any questions, then we reach out to our product manager and the person who owns the design. Then whenever asking questions, or if there are any discussions, or if there are any suggestions that we can give, we give. And then requirements keep getting changed, and they keep sending us like, this needs to be changed. So that's a never ending process. I have experience in the process. And how frequent, to answer precisely, I mean, that totally depends, when something is getting changed and when something is required to be done. So
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Parul, I want to understand, when a new requirement is coming to you, I understand that you will be working in a team, right? You will be working with team. Like, how do you proceed your testing? Like, when a new requirement is coming from the product manager directly to you, or like, how do you proceed your testing? I want to understand from requirement to the automation testing. How do you proceed it?
Well, the first expectation is, to understand the requirement thoroughly. Then you have to go through the high-level designs of that particular functionality or requirement, like how it is supposed to be implemented. Then, if you have any questions, then you have to reach back and forth to your whoever the stakeholder is that we are allowed to reach out to. After that, we are supposed to be, and so developers design low-level designs. So we are expected to go through the low level designs again, because low level design is something that will give you the entire picture, a glass picture of what the function, how the functionality will be implemented. Basis on that, we create our test cases to ensure that every particular end is covered with all the variants. And then once the functionality is developed, and then we do obviously more manual testing to make sure that everything is perfectly fine. And if the release is quite near, then definitely we'll be starting with exploratory testing. If releases are quite I mean, not just nearer, then we will start thinking from the automation perspective. If we can, what scenarios we can pick, what scenarios are critical, which we can pick for the regression testing, and then we start, I mean, try to automate them. That's how
so I want to understand now, for your automation testing, do you have a different kind of environment other than your QA environment, or you run those automation in the same environment as what QA environment is?
There is an environment. I mean, if so, for regression testing, we do it in QA environment only. However, if it's a smoke test, no, not yeah, sanity testing. Sanity testing. If it's sanity testing, then we do it in QA and QC as well, in both. So, so we have cycle like dev, QA, QC, and then production. But we do testing normally in QA and just kind of sanity testing in QC.
Your QA environment is stable to even automate things, or I mean, even to run automation script. Will it give 100% result?
Well, no, it's a very common problem, the environment issues. So yes, we normally face environment issues when the scripts get failed because of nothing, just an element didn't appear, and why it didn't appear? Because environment was slow. And why in my environment was slow? Because it was a QA environment and we have to dedicate our servers to production. So that's a very common scenario that
Any
happens.
idea like why you think that QA environment will be very unstable? Any idea you have?
multiple teams are working, and the very major issue that I have seen is, other than server slowness, I have seen test data inconsistency. People used to break the test data, so QA environment, we cannot have a lot of data there, right? We have sometimes we have limited set of data, and people who are testing can be many. So they used to, for a particular condition, they used to keep looking for the test data, and they used to keep breaking them. So test data inconsistency is the one of the major reason, other than server slowness, that I have
The
experienced.
major reason I see it's a testing environment, right?
Yeah,
There will be multiple teams, there will be multiple developers, and
yeah,
testing environment is something where code will come, which is not at all. We are not sure whether it is really working or not, and that's the reason it is testing environment, right? Because
right,
it's the
right.
environment where the code is coming, which is not sure whether it will perform in a perfect way or it will perform in a bad way. Bad way means
Correct.
defect. And when I'm sure you guys will be using CI, right? Like
Well, not much.
no.
Uh,
So developer, how they give the build? Do they use Jenkins or Bitbucket? Any idea?
they
Or
use Bitbucket. Yeah,
Bitbucket, right?
they use Bitbucket.
That is continuous integration process where you get build within seconds. And when you're getting build like from multiple teams, multiple developer, and the code is going inside the Kivin environment, and Kivin environment is something which is, it is not production,
It's
right? Because production is
yeah.
something which is tested and verified. Kivin environment is something which is not at all tested. And that's the reason you will see slowness. Some app will not respond to you. So do you deploy builds even in production or just, I mean, or in the Kivin environment?
No,
Okay.
I have not been a part of
Who
deployment.
is like whose job is
So
that in company?
so there is, I mean, as far as my experience, so I have seen, there's a separate team there. I have been part of various projects where, there is a separate team who does this thing, and then I have been a part of recent projects where it was the responsibility of the developers themselves. So they used to deploy the builds to the environments.
Okay, got it. Now my next question is, let's say you are trying to automate something, and in automation, let me know whether you run the automation script in your local system or will it be in the server, which is not at all visible. How it is?
Uh, well, again, it's probably, I mean, we are hitting the server itself, but yes, scripts run in our local system. I mean, we
Okay,
create and execute the scripts at our local system.
okay. So let me know one thing.
But
Okay, got it. Absolutely correct. Tell me one thing. If you are running some automation script for the first time, now you have written the code and now you are testing it, and you could see that some issue is coming. Like, is there a way by which you will debug it to understand whether it was really a app issue, or there was some infra issue, or there was some client issue, or there was some server issue? Is there a way you by which you understand that? Any idea? You are automating something and you got something, your app is not at all working how you are expecting it to behave. Like, how do you do, like, what do you do, what will be your next step?
I simply run the code in debug mode, where I perform, execute each and every step, and see the output of every step. So I normally debug that way
Got it. Don't
to
you go
see
to
where
the,
the test cause is.
got it, don't you go to the application to check what is the application log? Just asking.
Yes, we do that. Yep, we do that. We download the log files, and we used to, see what the logs are getting generated. And normally, they are something that, I mean, it is expected from a tester to understand the logs. But normally, our job is to, download the logs, share. If we understand something, then share the root cause. Like, this was the exception that was thrown. But if we cannot able to, I mean, in the technical terms, why it got reproduced, then we simply share the log file. We go to log files as well.
Got it. Parul, any idea what is super?
Super keyword, right?
You can tell me super keyword. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say there's a super class and subclass, and in the subclass, I need to. I want that. So super can be used in constructor as well as in method. So let's say in the subclass, I want that whenever someone is creating an object of subclass, I want the constructor of super class to also run along with subclass constructor. I'll be using super there first. Second, in the methods that I have overridden in the subclass, I want whenever someone is calling a method of an overridden method of subclass, I want the method of superclass also to run. So there I will be using super keyword to execute the superclass method.
Got it. Can you tell me some rules that you need to follow when you are writing a code with method overriding? Some rules are there that you need to follow when you use method overriding program. Any idea like what you should follow and what not? Tell me.
Yeah. So the method signature should be same. Return type should be same. Method name should be same, and number of arguments. And in fact, their types should be same. What you can change is you can change the access modifier. You cannot restrict the visibility. You can only extend the visibility. So if in the subclass, sorry, if in the superclass the method was public, you cannot make it protected or private in your subclass. Those are some of the rules that we have to follow.
And don't you think that you'll be using subclass and superclass, right? You are missing something. If you can tell me, you think about it and let me know.
Okay. In the override. I mean, the same method has to also be present in superclass. Method name should be same. Method return type should be same. Argument should be same. Giving the override annotation, but I think that's not compulsory.
Superclass should have a easy relationship.
Yes. So yes, subclass should be extending the superclass using extends keyword.
Okay. Okay. I mean, this is one of the thing that anyone will be expecting you. That's really a nice, correct answer. That I was knowing that you know it, but while telling you would have forwarded. That's no issue. Parul, I want to ask one question. I will give you one keyword in Java. Just let me know whether it actually a keyword in Java or not.
Okay.
Synchronization.
Synchronization is not the keyword. Synchronized is the keyword. I think synchronized is the keyword.
Exactly.
Am I wrong?
That is the keyword. Can you name me some more keyword in Java if you remember?
Well, yeah. I mean, all the data types like int, float, double. Other than that, for, if, while, do while. Other than that, I mean, true, false. Else, assert there's one. Other than that, there would be a lot more. There are around, I think, 40 to 50 keywords in Java.
Actually, there are 50. There are 50. No issue. So, I mean, it will be better if you remember it from A to Z in a alphabetic order. It will be great. I have uploaded a video on my channel which is 50 keywords in Java. If you go through that, I mean, it will be easy for you to understand all the 50 keywords. And it's not something rocket science. It is just alphabets that you have to remember, just A, B, C, D. It is like abstract, assert. If you see what I'm talking, it is just like alphabetic order I'm talking. Abstract, assert, boolean, break, byte, case, catch, char, class. If you see here, I'm using just A, B, C, D. And
right.
So it is just 50 keywords. That's the right answer. I want to know, since you have automated API also, right?
Yeah.
I want to understand, have you used JSON body also, or you have worked even on, I mean, you have worked only on XML or even?
Well, I have only worked with JSON body.
Okay, so what is XML?
Yep. XML is also, a kind of markup language where you have to pass data in the form of tags. However, in JSON, you can simply pass it within key value pair.
Key value, correct. Like what difficulty you have faced while automating your API or while automating your UI? Like which is more difficult and why? You have said me in the previous part of this session that you feel difficulty in automating your UI thing and you feel easy to automate your API. Why it is? Can you tell me?
Yep. So, when we are automating UI applications, there are a lot of things involved. There are a lot of elements that you have to track and that you have to capture in order to proceed, and then you have to execute everything. I personally believe whenever UI is involved, this is particularly for humans. And when you are automating UI, you face a lot of challenges, right? And some of them, in fact, they are nothing like just challenges. You cannot just overcome that. However, in REST API or in API, you are only concerned about data, because API is there just to allow the systems to communicate with systems, and the communication happens only with the exchange of data in either XML or JSON form. So you only have to automate the verification of the data that you are getting from server after calling an API. So you are not concerned about UI, like what element is there, is it present within the I mean desired time frame, or it is getting failed. So there are these kind of challenges
Exactly,
because
exactly.
of
So in API automation that you are doing it, you are also not worried about whether that element is clickable or not, or something like that. It is
correct,
just
right,
passing the element to the next step, and you're
right.
automatically done.
Right. And because of which, I feel whenever there's a REST API application that is going on, you can in fact automate its functional testing as well. Because again, you are only concerned about data. You can in fact automate your functional testing. However, in UI automation, I think that's quite not possible to automate functional. So
Parul, I want to understand, like in your company, they developed API so that other companies can use those API, or your company developed API so that finally they will integrate those APIs with your UI. How do you do that? Like, what is the main reason behind developing API in your company?
well, throughout my experience, whatever API projects that I have been part of, there were some who were developed for in-house only, for our in-house applications to integrate. And there is one project where we developed APIs to get them integrated with third party.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
I
there
have
are
seen
two
both of them.
cases now, right? I understood your point. There are two cases now. One, you develop the API, integrate with the UI, use it. There is second case where you develop the APIs, call someone to
Got it.
use it, call someone to consume it. I got it.
Yep.
Which of now you have two scenarios now. In these two scenarios, which API you will think that automating is important and why?
Important, right?
Which one is important?
Well, uh, I think automating the one that are for in-house will be important, because that will be used by a lot of applications. And since this is an API, its robustness is a very important factor for my applications, for my customers, right? And also, I mean, the APIs that are called by third party applications, those are also important. But when we are having interactions with third party, I have seen that automation is quite complex. It becomes quite complex, because third party servers might not be available, or how the interaction is being done may be quite complex. So basis on that, I can say automating the one which are in-house would
Okay.
be more important.
Okay, I will tell you something which will change your perspective of what you have answered. Just, I mean, just listen to me for next 2 minutes. See, you said me about in-house, right? Where, so you heard my scenario, right? I said that in in-house API, finally you will be integrating that with the UI. You heard this, right?
Yes, yes.
So see, whenever some application is getting integrated with the UI, like who will use it now? Customer, right? And customer, how they will use it? By UI. So
Yeah.
in this phase where first you are developing API and then integrating it with the UI, and your customer is using it with the UI, there automating API does not play a major role, because you are integrating it with the UI and customer is using your UI. So so you automate the UI front end part, not the back end, because it is finally integrated with the UI, and there is no use of automating your API here because it is already integrated with the UI. This is my first part. And now my second part, where I said that I will be developing API, and now this API is getting used or getting consumed by different companies, right? So you know that in your API that you have developed it, there will be, you said me right, in API, you just make sure whether the data is correct or not. Each JSON that you said, you only said me right, each
Yeah, yeah.
JSON, key and value. Key and value only plays a major role in JSON. If you see your response body of any JSON, key and value is only important, because this is what your consumer or your customer who is consuming your API is getting consumed, this key and value. And that is the reason you should automate this, because now your customer is not utilizing your UI, but it is taking your API. And that is the reason where you are developing the API and customer is consuming your API, you need to automate this part. Do you agree with me or not?
Yes, totally agree. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, Parul. That's all from this session, Parul. I was really happy with you. Really speaking, I was really happy with you. And till now, whichever automation interview I have taken, you would have seen on my channel.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have not seen, you can check it. This is the interview which I have enjoyed the best. I have seen that you could answer most of the question, and I mean, I was really happy. I mean, there are few questions which you were lagging. I gave suggestion from my side and made that answer 100% correct. So I hope that was okay with you.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so that's all suggestion from my side, Parul. I'm really happy that you have moved from doing a manual testing to automation now, and I'm frankly speaking, you have learned very good things, and that will really help you. That will really help you in future. And really speaking, you have done great. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you will do wonders. I mean, my good wishes are with you. If you need
Thank you.
any other suggestion, you can let me know.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
Thank
You
you
have
so much.
something to say before we close this?
Yeah, so I really like to, appreciate you that you are conducting these mock interviews for people, and they are, I feel, they are really beneficial for those who have just started in software career. I mean, software testing. I have seen that there is a, there's a belief, there's a misbelief, I would say, like people who are in testing, they are in testing because they are not well at development, but this is not the case. I personally believe I'm very fond of coding and I'm very fond of programming. I still enjoy test automation because test automation is something, or testing is something which is more critical than development. And your these interviews, your videos are really beneficial for those who have just started their career and they want to pursue their career in this field. So, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, because the purpose of getting this interview with you was to just learn, and I have learned a lot of things. So, thank you so much.
That's great, Parul. From how long you're watching my channel, if I have to ask?
From, I guess, last 3 to 4 months.
Okay, that's great. I could see that you were replying very fast that you want to take really an interview. And
Yeah.
that is the reason I scheduled it with you, because I was getting a proper response from your side. There were many
Mhm.
candidates who will send a mail that they want an interview. And when I tell them that this date and this month, I mean, this date or this
Yeah.
time, they will
Mm.
not appear. So maybe it happens. It's a human behavior. I won't blame anyone. But I was happy that you were replying me within seconds or within minutes. I was really happy, and that's the reason I chose this time, this date for the interview. I was someone's reply. I understand that whether they are really interested or not, because
Definitely.
it's a wastage of time, right? Someone say that they are coming to the interview and finally they don't come up. So
Yeah.
because I spent at least 40 minutes, 45 minutes in analyzing your resume or someone's resume whose interview I'm taking. Because if you see
Mhm.
my any interview, if you see my any interview, I don't ask questions from anywhere else other than their resume. Whatever thing they have written in a resume, I just ask them. And if you don't read resume someone's, asking questions in 40 minutes is not at all possible. And I
Correct.
went through your resume for 45 minutes. There are cases where I will see the resume for 40 or 1 hour and the person will not come up. I mean, there's a wastage of time, even for me, even for the person, even for everyone, because there is a delay of uploading video on channel. Because
Correct.
believe me, I get almost 20 mails in a day just to remind me that I need to upload a video. I know
Okay.
that I have to upload a video, right? Because but other people are not allowing me to do that. So that
Mm.
is one of the blocker for me, if I have to say. Thanks, Parul. I wish you a good health and a good career. In future, in case you need any help from my side, you can just send out a mail to me how you were sending me before, and I will definitely reply to you. Be in touch.
Sure.
I wish you a good health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.